Hi everyone, I'm Mitch Alpiner, the lead community manager on RUNE II. Today, we're going to talk with one of the members of our development team, Scott Lopez. Scott, what is it that you say that you do here?
Well, that's a good question, Mitch. I'm primarily an environment artist, but I was hired with a focus on destruction. Really, it was a matter of trying to visualize, okay, well how do we want this building to break apart? And that took a bit of iteration because in the early passes that I made, I sort of did this like top down order or even down up, I guess, because it works with the rebuildable system. So you'll build the bottom part, then the middle part, and then the top. And when you destroy it, it did the same thing. The top chunk would destroy first, then the middle, and then the bottom, right? And it looked a little too artificial, right? So then I started to think more, okay, well, how can we have parts from the top and the middle and the bottom all kind of break apart at different phases of destruction. So instead of having like top, middle, bottom phases, now it's just an overall phase combining the whole building. As you're hitting it, parts of the roof come off, including like parts of the walls. Essentially, each building has about three phases. I think there's a couple that have four, maybe one or two that have two, depending on how big and elaborate it is. But when you have a force of extreme power, how does that affect the structure and the integrity of the different materials of that building? My biggest tool was YouTube. Just searching and watching slow motion videos of buildings being blown up, or even just simple little objects, just seeing them explode. Shout out to Slow Mo Guys, I think is the name of the channel on YouTube. Luckily for us, most of our buildings are just wood and straw or hay rooftops. We do have tents with cloth, and that was a bit tricky. Wood, depending on the type of wood, will splinter and chunk, right? And then depending on how strong that force, those splinters and chunks may you'll have big chunks fly off, and then the moment they collide into something, depending on the force, it might split into two more chunks. That's where I got a lot of my reference, was watching those like slow motion videos. It's one thing to see like still photos of debris, but the destruction, I think it was much better to see something in action and moving, because that is essentially what the destruction system is. It's a visual effect, and you have to be able to visualize the motion, the energy behind the destruction. In my first passes, I was just making really kick-ass explosions, really awesome destruction with like over 200 chunks of debris flying for each phase of the building destruction. Well, one day and you might remember this, we play tested one of our maps, and the watchtower was set in there. It was like my first destruction asset that I worked on. That was like my test case, the watchtower. And our boss Matt goes up to it. And he's all excited to see the destruction. He's smacking it, and then the moment it starts to break, the whole server just starts chugging. Everyone's seeing like 10 frames per second of performance. I was like, "Oh, man," because I was so proud of like the level of detail I had going for this thing. It was like cinematic level, and movies and games are different. In games, everything's running real time, so performance is key, and you really have to optimize things. So I really had to dial back the number of destruction chunks and meshes being simulated with physics. With that said, the way that we make it look good in video games is by pairing it with other types of visual effects. So not only do we have like the destruction debris and the chunks flying around and colliding into objects and simulating physics, we pair that with some particle effects like smoke, some other particle effects that show like wood splintering and debris flying in the air. Even though you've reduced the number of chunks, paired with all that other stuff, it turns out to look really nice. I was testing my destruction in a blank map, and in there they perform beautifully. Well, put that asset in an actual game map, in an actual level that's, shipped in the game, and you've got trees, you've got huge terrain, bushes, and all these other things that are being rendered out and handled by the engine in real time. To throw in a physics simulation with over 200 chunks of debris just cripples it. So optimization is super important. There was something else that was a bigger challenge, actually. We had these static mesh buildings that, they look great, but they weren't built with destruction in mind. Prior, it was more like they were either like on or they were off, right? So there wasn't much in between. To utilize destruction with minimal visual, I guess, artifacts, you have to seal the mesh watertight. So we had a lot of instances where, like, a wall of a building, let's say it's made of logs, those logs were merged together, and the parts where the logs would touch on the top and the bottom were like deleted, but you couldn't see it, right? Because it's like on the inside of the model. Well, now I had to go in there and separate each log and remodel and recap all those open holes. Because if you don't do that, when you run it through the physics labs, it'll try and cap it for you, and you just get messy results that way. So that was actually the hardest part, to be honest. The process of modeling is easy, but it was a huge effort to get everything all set up to work with destruction. We did get some feedback from our players. I believe I saw something about the visuals of the buildings being destroyed. I hear you, and that's something I'm going to be addressing in the near future. I feel pretty confident and comfortable moving forward with any kind of destruction work that needs to be done. Rune 2 is actually where I got to like really explore destruction and utilize it as best as we could. There was a lot learned. I do have an ArtStation, artstation.com/Scotty Lopez. You should find me that way. And Twitter, GG Scotty Lo. I do have a Twitch, but I haven't streamed in a while. Twitch.tv/GG Scotty Lo.
Thanks for watching our developer interview with our artist, Scott Lopez. The carnage that you're seeing on screen right now is available to play with on the Rune II public test realm, available to all Rune II players, and will come to the Rune II live game in the future. Links on how to download the Rune II PTR are in the description down below. Tell us in the comments who you want to hear from next, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more awesome content just like this.